Good evening, and thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday with us. I could not be more excited about our topic and our guests tonight. I'm Michelle Deatrick. I'm the founder and chair of the DNC Environment and Climate Crisis Council. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, please introduce yourself in chat, and I invite you to sign up for council updates at dncclimate.org. This evening, we are gathered from many places. I am speaking to you from Anishinaabeg land in Southeast Michigan. Wherever you are watching from, thank you so much for being with us, because wherever we are, our Earth is being devastated right now as we speak by the climate crisis. And in our determination to fight that, we are united. The DNC Council on the Environment and Climate Crisis was created in 2019 to be a loud, proud voice within the DNC and Democratic Party, demanding that our leaders take immediate action, urgent action, at the scale and scope needed to address the climate crisis and protect our environment. Because here's the plain truth. It is a truth that we all know, but tragically, too many in power do not or choose to ignore it. The climate crisis is not on its way. It is not over the horizon. It is here, it is now, and it has been here for a while. As we speak tonight, our friends in the Pacific Northwest are experiencing a record-breaking, unprecedented, dangerous heat wave. Our friends in the East and the Gulf Coast are bracing for a very active hurricane season. Wildfires are already brewing in the West, and here in the Midwest, in Michigan, we have right now serious flooding of homes, streets, farmland, and infrastructure strained beyond its limits, including right here in my own township. And the rains have just gotten started. The crisis is here, it's huge, and it will not be solved without big, comprehensive solutions. We cannot do the same thing we have done for the last few decades and expect some different result. It's time to stop pretending we can put out this fire, this crisis, by continuing to add more fuel to the flames. Lucky for us, we have champions throughout Washington, two of whom are on the live stream tonight, who understand this and are ready to take action. And we've experienced dedicated organizers and a generation of leaders rising up to take action. And one of each of these is on the call with us tonight too. No doubt, action is needed. And one of the most urgent things we can act on is ending fossil fuel subsidies. American taxpayers today pay $15 billion plus per year in direct federal fossil fuel subsidies to the industry that is polluting us. At the same time, companies are raking in millions of taxpayer dollars. The 20 largest fossil fuel companies account for more than 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions in the modern era. The United States, our country, is the largest oil and gas producer in the world. This is not the kind of global leadership we need to be showing. These subsidies are shameful, they are disastrous, they've been going on for more than 100 years, which is incredible. Ending the subsidies is a critical step in fighting climate change, stopping environmental injustice, and protecting our planet, our future. And President Biden agrees. Last year he said, I don't think big oil companies need a handout from the federal government. We are going to get rid of fossil fuel subsidies and invest in clean energy. With less than 10 years left to save the planet from devastating levels, even more devastating, and escalating levels of climate change, we're long past the time for half measures. We need strong, science-based action that tackles the scope of the crisis. So ending the subsidies is a necessary, though not sufficient step in that direction, and which is why, as I said, I could not be more excited to be here tonight with our guests to discuss this topic and kick off a week of action from the council and our many allies in this movement. Tonight, we have an amazing lineup. We have two of our congressional champions, Congressman Khanna and Congressman Andy Levin. Both have fought tirelessly in the halls of Congress to end these subsidies, address the climate crisis, protect our environment, and grow good union jobs while we do it. We are also so lucky to be joined by the chair of the College Democrats of America's Environmental Caucus, Paul Presendieu, who's doing heroes work of organizing young people around this issue, and Paco, Fabián, campaign director for Our Revolution, an incredible organizer and thinker who is leading a very important rally during this week of action, and so much more. Before we start, a quick big thank you to our wonderful chat leaders from College Democrats of America and the Council, Matthew Ruiz, Preston Van Alstyne, and Kira Gilbreth. Please watch for the links they're going to be dropping in as we go to connect you with the work that our congressional leaders are doing with actions that you can take. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce Congressman Ro Khanna, who I just learned would be my own member of Congress if I hadn't moved from California to Michigan 17 years ago to go to grad school. As first vice chair of the House Progressive Caucus, he has stood at the vanguard of national progressive politics, passing multiple bills into law during his 3 terms. As chairman of the really key oversight subcommittee on the environment, Ro led hearings on the Texas energy disaster and demanded accountability from fossil fuel industry executives who took government subsidies. And he has worked to put an end to fossil fuel subsidies and remains steadfast in ending those subsidies to the industry. And with that, I will hand it off to the inspiring Congressman Ro Khanna. Congressman, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your extraordinary leadership of the DNC Climate Council, and to everyone for joining in your leadership and activism in helping us end fossil fuel subsidies and have a bold climate plan. I want to just acknowledge Andy Levin, who is actually one of my favorite members of Congress, just a progressive champion in so many ways. It's an honor to be on here with him. And to Paul and Paco, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for your activism. We had a hearing on the environment subcommittee that I chair with Greta Thunberg, and we had a number of economists, and we had the oil industry executives, the Petroleum Institute there. And I asked, a number of members asked the oil executive, and we said, well, do you think every industry should be treated the same? And he said, yes, I don't think there should be any special treatment for the fossil fuel industry. At that point, I said, well, what about the fact that they get accelerated depreciation? And the executive, I kid you not, you can go look at the exchange, did not know that the fossil fuel industry gets accelerated depreciation. But the reality is, if you want to drill a well, if you want to extract fossil fuels now, you can claim what most other industries have to claim for 7 years. You can claim that all up front. You get all of the depreciation up front. He admitted that that was unfair. He admitted that he should be treated as any other industry. All we are asking is not to put our hands on the scale that actually favors the fossil fuel industry. I mean, we need a policy that does exactly the opposite, that favors renewable, that favors energy storage, that favors batteries, that favors research. I'm back in Silicon Valley. I was talking to people on fusion, the dream of fusion, which is how the sun creates energy, that favors research into that. But instead, our Congress, our tax code for 100 years plus has favored fossil fuel industry. We're making it easier. We're incentivizing in this country today fossil fuels to develop. And they have benefits that no other industry has in the tax code. So President Biden has shown great leadership, great vision by saying that those provisions that benefit the fossil fuel industry need to be removed. That at the very least, we ought to have a neutral tax code. Many of us want a tax code that actually favors the renewable sector, that favors energy storage, but there is no justification for having a tax code that is favoring the fossil fuel industry. I think Greta Thunberg said it would be a gut to the punch. I mean, a punch to the gut of to the environmental movement if we did not remove these fossil fuel subsidies. So we are working on it. I know the Progressive Caucus is unified. We want to make sure that these fossil fuel subsidies are not there when we have the reconciliation package. And your leadership, along with the president's leadership, will help us achieve this historic goal. So thank you for organizing this. And I look forward to working with everyone to make sure this is in the reconciliation package.
Thank you so much, Congressman. We're hoping you might have time for a question or two.
Of course.
Thank you so much. So Michael from Salt Lake City is asking, how can we get this passed? How can we get around the filibuster and get solidarity on this?
Well, the good news, Michael, is we don't have to get around the filibuster on this. I mean, we do have to get around the filibuster on voting rights and a number of other issues, and I believe we should eliminate the filibuster, or at least have a voting rights exception. But on this, we just need to get it in terms of reconciliation. This is clearly a budget issue. Budget issues can be part of a reconciliation bill that requires 51 votes. So this simply means that we have to convince all of the House members to vote for it, and we have to convince 50 senators to vote for it. And all of you can play a big role, because you can say, this is the president's vision. This is what the grassroots activists want. This is what the environmental movement wants. And this is about fundamental fairness. We shouldn't be giving special treatment in 2021 to the fossil fuel industry. So we can get this done. Andy and I are going to work very, very hard to make sure it's part of the House package. And then we need all of your help to make sure that it's part of the Senate reconciliation package.
It's so empowering. We really can make a difference on this one. And together with you and with Congressman Levin, we really have a chance to do this, and it's so crucial. Got one more question from Robin in Bakersfield. Robin is concerned about the fossil fuel infrastructure in her community and is wondering about if the end of subsidies will help move the needle on a just transition to a green economy in local communities like hers.
Robin, it's a really good question. And I would say a couple things. First, we need to protect residential communities to make sure that these projects aren't near actual residential communities with the pollution and the health effects. Second, we need to make sure that the new jobs are in communities that currently are most dependent on fossil fuels. We have to bring good jobs there first and ensure that those communities that they're going to have the opportunity for wealth generation, for new job creation, and that this is not going to be subtracting from their communities, but additive to their communities. The reality is automation is really causing a lot of the job loss in these communities. And what we're saying is we're going to bring new jobs, new opportunities to these communities. But the final point is, while I think some of the executives have really behaved badly and have not been transparent, I think we have to have respect for those who have been in the fossil fuel industry, the workers, their families. There have been generations of people. They helped build America. And we ought to treat them with respect and dignity that they deserve, and make sure that there is economic opportunity and that their economic needs are met, and that it is something where they have jobs first before we're asking them to give anything up. What's asking them to give things up is the automation movement. So this is why we need a bold investment in climate, because that's going to bring a lot of new jobs, and those jobs are going to be in communities exactly like yours, Robin.
Thank you. Excellent answer. And it really will make a difference. And that piece about making sure that the communities and the workers and the families that are impacted, as well as all those who are harmed by climate crisis, are taken care of and supported is really a crucial piece of this. We thank you so much for taking this time to be with us. We know that you are super busy. We got your back. So many thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Let me just say what you're doing is extraordinary, because the DNC really matters. A lot of people listen to the DNC in Congress and in the Senate. And for you to take the leadership in calling for this and having the DNC, people in the DNC push for this, it really makes the world of difference. So thank you for what you're doing.
I am very privileged to get to do this. Thank you so much. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
And it is, that was amazing. It's an honor now to introduce my good friend, Andy Levin, whose work here in Michigan and nationally I've admired deeply since long before he entered Congress. Andy Levin's life's work of championing the working class, human rights, and green energy has never felt more urgent, with the colliding crises of the pandemic, racial injustice, and climate change. As the only member of Congress who ran a state workforce agency, which is really cool, and worked as a union organizer and a green energy entrepreneur, Andy meets every challenge by asking the same question: how do we put workers at the center of the solution? Andy describes his politics as practical progressivism. As a poet, I love the alliteration. He champions bold policies to tackle our most urgent needs while finding bipartisan ways to get things done. Thank you so much for being here, Congressman.
Well, it's great to see you, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me. First thing I got to say is love my Ro Khanna. Really, he and I are thick as thieves on so many things. And he's just a real real awesome progressive and a great thought leader. So Michelle, this work we're doing is so important. Let me start a little bit where Ro left off about the importance of what is happening here. Like this thing you're doing and the role of all the folks watching. Look, so, okay, the president has negotiated his bipartisan deal on infrastructure. Fine. Does it include human infrastructure like childcare, like the caring economy? Does it include like almost everything we want on climate change? Like, no, it doesn't. So this reconciliation thing is really important. And I agree with Ro that it doesn't require that we deal with the filibuster because, you know, reconciliation can be passed by Democrats alone. But come on, friends, that means every single Democratic senator has to go for it. And so how much pressure you put on, how much talk, how many phone calls, how many emails, how many demonstrations like tomorrow at the White House, how much action there is around this will literally determine how much we can shoehorn into that reconciliation package, the FY20, the fiscal year 2022 budget that we need to do as a companion, as an absolutely necessary companion to the bipartisan agreement the president made. And let me just speak personally to the pieces I've got in here in the mix. I mean, I wrote and introduced the Electric Vehicle Freedom Act, the EV Freedom Act, with AOC last Congress, and now it's here again. It lines up perfectly with the president saying he wants 500,000 chargers out there. But what we need to be specific. We need high-speed chargers comprehensively throughout the whole national highway system, including Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Alaska, to crush range anxiety and make sure people can drive an EV from any point to any other point without worrying about running out of juice. Plus, people who live in an apartment or a house without a garage, we need charging infrastructure in frontline and vulnerable communities. And we put workers' provisions in there like you can't believe, like neutrality if workers want to organize, like the kind of training programs that the IBEW has for, so its members can do these jobs. We're talking about thousands and thousands of good union jobs. Similarly, with Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey, and AOC, I introduced the Build Green Infrastructure and Jobs Act. That's electrifying school buses, city buses, rapid transit, high-speed rail, everything. And again, lots of good jobs. And then Senator Warren and I introduced the Buy Green Act of 2021 to spend $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years for the federal government, but also state and local governments to have green everything. We've got to lead. There's almost no way we can act fast enough, broadly enough, boldly enough to meet this crisis. And so we've got to keep on pushing. I'm trying to do it across everything. So I introduced the Sustainable Investment Policy Act and the Retiree Sustainable Investment Opportunities Act so that workers can invest their pension money and their retirement money in a way that honors their own values about our environment, our climate, and human rights for workers around the world. And stay tuned because I've got a bill coming on green buildings, which won't surprise you, Michelle, because of, I started and I ran for so many years the PACE market here in Michigan, Lean and Green Michigan. We've got to have set date certains by which all new buildings will be zero net energy or better and have standards and funding for people to retrofit all the existing building stock. So we've got to act comprehensively across the board, absolutely end subsidies for fossil fuels, have much more robust subsidies for people to electrify, buy EVs, solar panels, wind, geothermal, battery storage, everything, so we can rocket our way towards a sustainable world. It cannot happen 1 second too soon. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks so much, Andy. I love everything you were saying, but something that really resonated with me was when you were talking about empowering local governments. As you know, I'm a recent county commissioner, and I founded our county's environmental council and still serve on that. And I really see how difficult it is for local governments, even when they want to do the right thing, to do it. They need the resources. And so, hearing about money for weatherization and for electrifying their fleets, and then helping to get more EV charging stations, which is the owner of a Chevy Volt, I would love personally. Anyway, I love all the legislation that you're talking about, and the multi-sector aspect of it. Do you have time for a couple of questions from our audience?
Absolutely. That's the best part.
It is. Okay. First up, Shalom from Greenbelt, Maryland, is concerned about Americans buying large vehicles, non-electric vehicles, suggests the federal government could subsidize electric vehicles, maybe with bigger subsidies for smaller, more efficient vehicles. You've already talked a little bit about EVs, but do you have any further thoughts?
Right, but my legislation is about charging infrastructure, and I'm right there with Shalom about what they're talking about. Not only do we need to continue and expand subsidies, we've got to make them point of sale subsidies. This thing about how, when you file your taxes next, you'll get a tax break, and it's complicated, and we've got to put it just like I think they did with cash for clunkers some years ago. We've got to make it like when you buy the EV, it comes right off the price, and let the dealer and, the Uncle Sam sort it out. So, we should make that happen. There are bills in Congress. We hope to get them into this reconciliation to make that happen, and it would be huge. I do think the thing about size of vehicles, I'm very interested in this thing of, the move to make fully electric pickups and SUVs. I got 4 kids. I needed a big-ish vehicle for those years, Michelle, and we have to electrify everything. We have to figure out what to do about dang cargo ships and, over-the-road trucks. So we can't, we've got to do everything, but I'm right there with Shalom that we have to move people into EVs way faster, and they're great. They're so amazing to drive, so let's go.
Totally agree. I even had a skeptical spouse, but it's been actually great to drive our Volt. So, and I think your point about point of sale is really important. It's a matter of justice. Not everyone can afford to float that money until they get their tax money back, right?
100%. Absolutely. Let's make it doable for people, not just, rich people who want to have a Tesla as a vanity project. Excuse me.
Exactly. So Drew from Rochester, Vermont says, how can we ensure that Democrats in Congress act at the scale of the crisis? Is concerned that we may end up with infrastructure legislation that does not act on climate.
Drew, for one thing, we're not even acting at the scale of the crisis. How you got to admit, or for me anyway, I'll just speak for myself. I was kind of surprised and gratified that Joe Biden came out with the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan and the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan included so much climate stuff in it, has hired amazing climate leaders, like Deb Haaland and Granholm and, on and on. But here's the thing. We've got to go much faster. And the specific answer to your question is there is quite a danger that not only will this reconciliation thing get messed up altogether, but that it also, how big will it be? How climate focused will it be, right? This is a live question right now that's about hitting the streets, hitting the airwaves, hitting your social media. Everybody just has to create such an environment to require the Joe Manchins and Christian Cinemas and whoever else those, kind of centrists are. Remember, we need all 50 votes in the Senate and virtually all the votes in the House, where we have the smallest margin in decades. So we need a lot of big voice and a lot of pressure on us from the outside to make sure we make it the boldest, biggest climate reconciliation we could possibly do. And that's, Michelle, that's why your leadership is so amazing and important, and all these people you gather together. Let's go. I'm ready, but we need your help.
One final question.
Sure.
Thank you. Burchell from Colorado. How can we support local solutions to the climate crisis, like microgrids, that would help support local economies?
Did you say Virgil?
Burchell.
Burchell. Okay, Burchell. You're singing out of my hymnal. So I'm on the Education Labor Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. How about this, Burchell? Why don't we do an inventory? And this may seem far afield to you, but I swear I'm talking about your local solutions. Think about all the places in the world that never came close to having 24/7 electricity, right? Why don't we leapfrog, obviously, because we have to, the old-fashioned ways of doing it, and look at the whole, like, just take Latin America for one region. Why don't we do an inventory of all the offshore wind resource of Latin America, all the onshore wind resource, all the solar resource, all the geothermal resource, and then figure out for every place how we can create locally generated electricity and have microgrids in that area where they produce their own energy. And, this could create so many American jobs building all this stuff. And not only that, then we can start sharing the jobs with people. Like, people are freaking out about the Northern Triangle, right? What if Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador, what if we were offering to partner with them to begin to build some of all the stuff they need there for a clean energy future right now? And so obviously I'm for doing this in Colorado, but look, this is a global crisis that we have to tackle on a global scale. So let's use what we do in your area, Burchell, and then spread it out to the whole world, because it's got to happen, and it's got to happen right now.
Absolutely. And I love that you took that and talked about how this is a global problem. In some ways, a global problem that, in many ways, actually, profoundly, that the richer nations have exported to the global south.
Right. How much of all the greenhouse, gases have we produced throughout the, Industrial Revolution more recently? And so many of my colleagues, especially Republican colleagues, but not only, are just constantly freaking out about China, Belt and Road and all. And their response, Michelle, to me is sort of like anxious and defensive. Yeah. What if we have a broad-shouldered, big-hearted, innovative American responses? Let's not worry about the Chinese. Why don't we go and partner with these poor countries who are suffering, because of all the, the greenhouse gases we've been putting out there for so long, and let's help them in a way they'll never forget, that supports their own economic development. So I think I'm excited about this opportunity, but we've got to act really fast and really comprehensively.
We do. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Always make me think, and go forth and do good things, as you always do.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to go work on getting my constituent Danny Fenster out of a horrible prison in Burma. So everybody check out Danny Fenster and raise up his name in your social media accounts, because we're going to get him out of there. He's a journalist who was just trying to report on that coup. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to introduce Paul Presendieu, who is the current National Environmental Caucus Chair for the College Democrats of America. Yay, go College Dems, where he assists the organization with environmental programming for the 600 plus chapters throughout the nation. There's a lot of strength, a lot of power, a lot of votes there. And Paul is doing an amazing job leading. Paul also currently works as the outreach coordinator of Sustainable Westchester, a nonprofit consortium of 44 local governments in Westchester County, to support programming in environmental protection and accessibility to renewable energy. Paul has completed Vice President Al Gore's climate reality training, which is awesome. I did that too, and is an active member for the United Nations Association and Green Latinos. I'm so lucky to get to work with Paul on so many projects. Thanks for being here, Paul. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Michelle, Madam Chair. It's really great working with you, and it honestly has been surreal because you giving not only college Democrats, but high school Democrats and young Democrats in general a seat at the table of your environmental discussions really is invaluable and shows that we really can come together for solutions that work for all generations in society. As you said before, my name is Paul Presendieu. I'm coming in from the Muncie Lenape region, which is now modern-day New Rochelle, New York. And I am the current chair of the Environmental Caucus for the College Democrats of America. We organize college students to address what we view as now one of the most vital issues, climate change and our climate crisis. We do this in multiple ways. We help students with organizing on campus, helping create environmental clubs to help support students that are pursuing an environmental discipline with extracurricular activities. We also help provide students with resources to create sustainable committees for colleges, communities at large, to bring campus administrators, faculty, professors, and students together to find common themed solutions and establish multi-year sustainability plans. And we also provide resources for students to make the early leap to become community leaders as opposed to student leaders, which means going to village or city hall to help create a conservation advisory committee, an energy advisory committee, and making sure that students have a voice with local government leaders that can help hopefully create a movement to the higher branches. And as Michelle and Khanna has said, we can't do that without ending the corporate handouts that are currently happening. We can't authentic with our transition towards renewables, reduction of our carbon emissions, and our ability to work with the international community on these climate-related issues unless we really put an economic power behind our commitment in environmental stewardship. Michigan has been in the news lately, unfortunately, for climate-related issues, and we know that for younger generations, in my generation, these extremities of the weather patterns are going to become the norm unless we unless we steer the ship back into the right direction. We can no longer allow corporations to profit off of our future by continuing to exacerbate the stability of our natural resources, the stability of our weather patterns, and we need to really address through an intergenerational approach a way that we could really mitigate our climate-related issues through the lens of justice, because we need to make sure that we're bringing everyone to the table and really tapping into the heterogeneous diversity that is America, because that's how we could bring strength, so that people in Alaska could help us in New York, and then people in Florida can help people in Oklahoma, and really putting together that fabric that is the Democratic Party and the environmental leadership within it. You guys may know this already, because that's why we're on the Zoom. That's why we're talking about here. We are facing an unprecedented health and economic crisis through the corporate handouts that the fossil fuel industry is receiving. This is really driving an expansion of fossil fuels development in the United States, and if left unchecked, the United States of America will be on track to be responsible for 60% of the global growth in oil and gas production over the next 10 years. And that really is completely disingenuous towards the climate emergency that they're currently in, and the potential that we have to really completely be independent from fossil fuels and be on a commitment towards generating carbon-free and clean energy. This is why we're really taking the charge. I've been working very closely with Michelle, my colleagues, and the young Democrats, high school Democrats, to realize how can we organize college students and students in general to make sure our voices are heard. How can we engage local municipal environmental leaders and environmental advisors to engage with high school students, so that municipal conservation and environmental committees could create a subcommittee to allow students to be on there to have their voices be made. Same thing could be happening on the county level, a college level, because colleges are part of the communities of the municipalities. You actually have some colleges that have more students on the college that are in the town there, which is why you might find some areas where you have a village trustee or a town trustee that's 19 years old, because college students know how to organize when it comes to things that they're very passionate about. And we're really just happy to really have a voice and opportunity to talk with Michelle, members of Congress, our colleagues, and young Democrats and high school Democrats said before. And if any of you are a college student that are looking to get more involved with College Democrats of America, feel free to email me at collegedems.environment@gmail.com. I'll immediately connect you to your state federation president, and we will get to work to helping, share resources with you for environmental leadership, and also to make sure that you're able to get the word out to members of your student body, because we had to have a sense of urgency and we had to act now, because we didn't start acting yesterday. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Paul. You actually answered the first of our two questions already, because like a good organizer and leader, you made a pitch for people to join in and start to your work. We did have a question I thought you might be interested in answering. Ellen in Utah asked, she says, I represent a community coalition advocating for less asphalt, more transportation and transit alternatives. And do you have any ideas or hopes about what a green future might look like, especially in terms of transportation?
Well, in terms of transportation, we have to be at completely net zero mode of transportation. We have the infrastructure for electric vehicles. There is a little bit of an economic barrier that we had to overcome by allowing, average residents or LMI, low to moderate income community residents to be able to access technology. But I believe that municipalities could jump on the window, can really jump into the leadership of that by allowing like common modes of transportation, such as bus systems. You could look at it, see if there's shuttle programs that can be done. And there are lots of organizations that are out there that can really help and facilitate that type of transportation. I don't know if you could email me. I'll be happy to keep the conversation going, because I've been doing a lot of research about this independently. I actually went above and beyond and been seeing about there's municipalities that are bringing in electric vehicle garbage trucks for the Department of Public Works. So there's ways that municipalities can really allow these fundamental operations, such as like law enforcement, public safety. I don't know about fire trucks, but the essential services municipalities can really facilitate modes of transportation. And I think that really is there at the foundation, because it has to be, as we said before, an economic lens. It has to go through the lens of economic prosperity. Some municipalities may have some economic barriers that prevents them from being able to make these transitions for this green economy. So it's really going to take a little bit of extra research to identify organizations and create the holistic private-public partnerships to really put these things into play.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was an amazing answer. And I love your focus on, the public transit side, shuttles, all the range of means of transportation that we absolutely need to focus on. Yeah, I don't know about fire trucks, but we got to get there. So I look forward to continuing to work with you. I know we'll be in touch very soon. And thank you for your absolutely invaluable leadership.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. Keep up your great work, all of you on social media. I see these different addresses, different states. We're all in this together.
Absolutely. Take care. And I'm now I feel absolutely so happy to get to introduce Paco Fabián, who is the campaigns director for our revolution. He's an experienced public relations professional. He's worked on a range of issues, including workers' rights, immigration reform, trade preferences for the Andean region, human rights for farm workers in the U.S., yay. Yay for all of these, but universal health care for all, federal government whistleblowers, and housing affordability. He began his political career working on Capitol Hill and has worked as a journalist and communications professional for a number of high-profile organizations. Holds a master's in international relations and political theory from the University of Westminster in London, and received his BA in political science from the University of Arizona. And he is, by the way, doing absolutely incredible work organizing in opposition to federal fossil fuel subsidies. So, Paco, I hope you'll share your thoughts with us on fossil fuel subsidies matters and what people can do.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, Michelle, and to the DNC Environmental and Climate Crisis Council for having me on, and to Representative Khanna, Representative Levin, to Paul. All the guests today have really knocked it out of the park, and super excited to be working with you all at the DNC Council, as well as with the rest of the guests going forward. So I don't want to get into too much of why fossil fuel subsidies are terrible, because I think we've heard it from Michelle and from everybody else, right? The question I want to answer is, what are we all going to do about it, right? So, the DNC Climate Council, Our Revolution, which is where I work, Oil Change International, who I know Colin's on there watching. Hey, Colin. Greenpeace USA, the Sierra Club, the Natural Resources Defense Council, several other organizations that are involved in fighting fossil fuel subsidies have come together. We've been working together for about, a month, and some of them even longer, to try and take advantage of this moment, right? We have this incredible opportunity to really rein in fossil fuel subsidies and the fossil fuel industry itself. In this moment, we have a president that supports ending fossil fuel subsidies. We have friends in Congress. You heard from two of them now, Khanna and Andy Levin, and several others, right? Part of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And we've got an outside game now, right? This whole week is going to be dedicated to making sure Congress and the White House and everybody else does something to help us end fossil fuel subsidies. And so what we're going to be doing this whole week, and this week is being kicked off today here at this meeting with the DNC Council on Environment and the Climate Crisis, is we're all coming together and really using this whole week to really push Congress to do something about fossil fuel subsidies. Right? There's several bills there. We have our friends at Our Revolution. We like to call it an inside-outside strategy. We have friends on the inside pushing legislation, wrangling other members of Congress, and then we have us, right? The folks on the outside that have to really push all the other members of Congress that haven't really been on board with ending fossil fuel subsidies. And so we're doing that this week. On Tuesday, we'll be holding a rally outside of the Capitol with a lot of the groups I mentioned. Michelle's going to be there. Representative Khanna is going to be there. Representatives from Greenpeace, from Oil Change International, Friends of the Earth, Sierra Club, a bunch of different organizations, right? We'll be there, again, pushing Congress, making sure that we include ending fossil fuel subsidies in either the infrastructure bill or budget reconciliation, right? And a lot of people have asked me, right? So does it really matter if we go out and do a march? By the way, we're going to have a giant 8-foot fossil dinosaur out there with us. So if you're in the DC area, come hang out with us, get a picture with our fossil dinosaur that's going to be eating fossil fuel money. But a lot of people ask me, does it really matter if we show up to a march, if we show up and, does it matter that we sign a petition? Does it matter that we make a phone call? And let me tell you, it absolutely does. And the best example I have for that is from my previous work. I did a lot of work around the Fight for 15 before I came over to Our Revolution. And I remember when we first kicked that off in 2012, whenever we said we need to raise the minimum wage to 15, back then people's reaction was, well, are you crazy? We can't do that. 15's too much. It's double the minimum wage, which is still, $7.25 an hour, the federal minimum wage. And it's impossible. We can't do it. It's too much, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to now. 15 is now the floor. There's bills in Congress for 15. They didn't get through the Senate. Thank you very much, parliamentarian. But, we'll keep pushing for that. We changed people's minds on that, right? People that said it was impossible now are pushing and helping us to do it, right? In Congress and outside of Congress and everywhere else. That is what we have to do. We have to be out in the streets. We have to phone call our members of Congress. We have to email them. We have to sign petitions. And we have to do all this in order to show the popular support that exists for ending something like fossil fuel subsidies. And so that's what we're going to be doing on Tuesday. We'll be pushing. And if folks, again, are in the DC area, you can, sign up. There should be a link that should pop up here soon. There it is. dncclimate.org has all the different events that are going to be happening. And on Tuesday, we'll be doing that. I think on Wednesday, we're going to have a phone banking day. You can call your member of Congress, call your House member, call your senator, and tell them that you need to end fossil fuel subsidies. And we'll be doing a big push on social media on Thursday. And then there's a bunch of other events happening, right, around the country and here in Washington, D.C. this whole week, right? Everybody's in D.C. ready to push for environmental issues and to end fossil fuel subsidies. And so that's how you guys can get involved. Other ways you can get involved, I think you heard from Paul, join if you're a college student, join your College Democrats of America chapter at your university. Get involved with them, help them push. If you're involved at the Democratic Party level, whether it's at the county or at the state or at the city level, get involved and push your organization to pass a resolution, right, in support of ending fossil fuel subsidies. Join an environmental organization, right, Greenpeace USA or NRDC. Get involved, because as you've heard from everybody else, it's an emergency and we can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I don't come from a background of environmental work, as Michelle said. I come from immigrant rights. I come from worker rights. I come from some international work, housing and Medicare for all, right? That's kind of my background. But I'm involved in this now because I realize that none of that is going to matter if our planet disappears, right? If we're not here anymore. So it's a fundamental thing we have to do. And for our revolution, fossil fuel subsidies is a red line. We have to get rid of those. It's, for us, the best thing we can do in an infrastructure bill or in budget reconciliation in order to start seriously addressing the climate crisis. It will make it a lot more expensive for fossil fuel companies to do what they do, which is destroy the earth. And as we all know, what they care about is the bottom line. So join up with one of your groups, join with our revolution if you have a local chapter near you. We'll be fighting for this, and there'll be a lot more activity over the summer when this infrastructure and budget reconciliation bill is really, really ramping up. Right now, we're just putting our flag in the ground saying this is don't cross this line. We got to get rid of fossil fuels. So, Michelle, thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate you, and happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Paco. I want to emphasize that we're in chat, and also we'll be having it pop up a little bit later on, a link to actually sign up for the Tuesday rally, whether you're in DC or you're going to be watching the live stream. And you can also go to that. There it is. So you can go ahead and sign up right now to do that. Having a strong presence is important, and if you can't make it, at least share the information. So
one more thing, if you're outside of DC, we'll be live streaming it on all kinds of different channels. You'll be able to see it, I believe, on the channel you're watching right now, as well as at Our Revolution and Greenpeace and all kinds of other places. So you should be able to find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Twitch. If you're there, take a pause from playing Fortnite and help us end fossil fuel subsidies.
Awesome. And thank you also for calling out some of the members of the coalition that is working on this. This is not, any one organization. And there are people who I know are listening from Friends of the Earth Action and Oil Change and Greenpeace, Sierra Club, NRDC, Oxfam, and more, 0 Hour, who've all done incredible work to help to make this week of action come together. There was a question asked earlier by Colin. I'm actually not sure Colin's state, but he's
in Maine, I think.
Is it Maine? All right. Colin from Maine, who was asking about what is your thinking on how getting rid of these subsidies might generally weaken big oil and big gas? What kind of a difference will it make? Wondering about your thoughts on that.
Well, look, I think, these companies generate a lot of money, right? But it will make it a lot more expensive for them to decide to drill a new oil well, right? Or start doing a new or exploring a new fracking project, because they won't be able to automatically, as Khanna mentioned, right, get the depreciation that they now get as one of the subsidies, and that's just one, right? I think oil and fossil fuel companies get $15 billion. That's billion with a B, on in federal subsidies, and those are just the ones that apply to only the fossil fuel industry, right? They get a bunch of others that apply to any other kind of business, but we're talking here about the fossil fuel subsidies that apply just to the fossil fuel industry, and that's $15 billion a year. Some people say it's 20. I'm not a numbers guy, that's why I do comms, right? But that's a lot of money, regardless. And so that's a bottom line thing for them, right? Imagine if we were able to get that $15 billion in subsidies, right? And invest it instead in renewable energy, right? And cars and solar and wind. That would jumpstart the renewable vehicle industry, just as an example, much like all these subsidies, launched the fossil fuel industry 100 years ago, right? And they've been getting, by the way, these subsidies for over 100 years. Right? The reality is that industry doesn't need those subsidies anymore. And they will think twice about drilling if they're not going to get the money back immediately.
Yeah, I think all of that is true. And there are times that they're operating on fairly narrow margins. It's happened. So, yeah, I think the subsidies at times are keeping some of them, especially the smaller operators, afloat.
Right.
So one more quick question.
Sure.
We've gotten a number of emails and contacts over the last couple of weeks from people who are really concerned that 2021 might be a replay of 2009 in various ways.
Mm-hmm.
One of them being that Democrats in general, progressives and environmental and public health advocates in particular are not going to successfully achieve the legislation we need. Do you have a response to that?
Absolutely. Look, Democrats, President Biden, and Democrats in Congress campaigned on, ending climate change, right, or addressing climate change. They campaigned on a bunch of other things that, for my organization are progressive issues, right? And they need to deliver on those issues, because if they don't, and we saw that during Obama's second term, right? They're going to open the door for somebody like Trump to take over again in 2024. They're going to lose the House and the Senate in 2022. And they need to understand that, yes, it's about the planet, right? And they should get that. But if they don't understand that, some Democrats need to understand that it's about their political career. And maybe they will understand it if we say that, right? Because if they don't deliver, voters aren't going to take a chance again, right? And we might end up with a Josh Hawley or somebody running for Congress, Ted Cruz, version 4 or whatever it is, right? But somebody that's so horrible on the issues that we care about, including the climate. And I think there's a responsibility there for Democrats, right? That they have to deliver on some of the promises they made, because if they don't, it's going to be, midterm elections are already not very favorable to the party that's in control. This could make it much, much worse. It's
the right thing, and it's a smart thing to do politically. Win-win, right?
Exactly.
Why would we not do this?
Right.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I am looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday, bright and early.
We'll have coffee and donuts for everybody. Come on down.
So much for my post-pandemic dieting. So as we've heard from the very thoughtful and dedicated speakers here this evening, it's really clear that the crises of climate and environmental justice are here. Many thanks to Congressman Khanna and Levin, to Chair Presendieu, and to Paco, Fabián for their important work, for being with us, and to every one of you for listening and working for the good of people and planet. A big thanks again to the coalition that is working on all this and making it possible. We can all help to make the difference. And that's, I think, the message that I come away with from tonight. I feel inspired, and I hope you do too, because we've got this week of action, and I hope you're going to go to dncclimate.org and find out what you can do, whether you have 2 minutes or 2 days. There's an action where you can make a difference this week. While you're there, sign up for council updates, and we'll keep you informed going forward. We're working from inside the party and working outside from as well, because the council membership's open to any Democrat. There's no more trying to put out this fire, this storm of storms, this crisis of crises with water from a tea kettle. I'm full of a lot of hope this evening, because you really are the hope. What we, each one of us, what we do in the next few weeks and months matters profoundly as we push Congress toward making crucial legislative decisions. And as we move toward the big international climate conference, COP26 in Glasgow next November, let's organize, let's win this. We won November, we can win on climate. Thank you so much for being here tonight with us.